Did you get a haircut?
Did, man.
Yeah.
I got the best.
You gotta go the norm look. You gotta go the norm look soon, right?
Well, I got a good barber, so I got to take care of it.
Can you see the agenda or no?
Yes, I can, Steve.
Perfect. Thank you. Sorry. Perfect. We are recording.
Okay, great. Well, welcome everybody. If there is anybody out there besides just us, we are still meeting remotely under the executive order from the governor. We have no physical location. However, we do have the meeting posted in various locations, which you can access by Zoom, by phone. And if you're having difficulties getting to us, that's 746-5186. We've got Norm Gupel, Michelle Clark, and Steve Chamberlain with us today. And budget drivers and revenue is the topic. I'm going to forego the review of last meeting because I am woefully ill-prepared today and embarrassed about that. Sorry, guys. Yeah, so maybe I have not looked at meeting minutes yet, Steve. So if we can hold off on that, that'd be great.
Absolutely. We can table that and no worries. Yeah, happy just to run through. We had the first presentation last Thursday of the superintendent's budget. There's a lot of support documentation, but just wanted to just highlight at the finance committee meeting, the two major drivers. The first one is the bond. And just to refresh everybody's memory, this budget contains the second portion of the first bond, that bond in its completion, and an estimated amount of the first portion of the second bond. And altogether, that is $287,000. And this would be the biggest jump of the bond based on the 3-year laddered approach, because we went half, second half, first half, and then next year's budget will simply have the last piece. For the increase, it will be the smallest. This will be the biggest increase year. Everybody okay?
Yep. And
then the other piece is one that we spent a lot of time talking about here as well. It's the change, the actuarial change in the New Hampshire retirement system. It has gone up to, the employer now contributes for teachers 21%, and it's an increase of $252,000. So these two alone are $530-ish thousand so more than 50% of the increase. And then of course we had 100,000 PPE. We had three, a numeracy assistant, 2 instructional assistants, some transportation, and some out of district tuition to round out the major portions of the increase. But even just for posterity and for the tape, so people can make sure that they get it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Want me to just keep rolling?
Yeah, let's just keep cruising.
So I like, if there's any area that I've learned from Michelle, it's all about this revenue. It's all about this. Even today, she spent some time with me today talking and teaching me about this piece. So as we go into this discussion, and we're going to talk about revenues, right? And we spent some time, if you remember, we looked at, well, not that one. It's hard with this thing. Do you remember this picture?
Yes.
We spent some time. So this is the adequacy aid picture. And so what really comes into this is estimates and projections, because we don't know we don't know exactly how much until a lot of variables happen, but we have to get a budget done in December or the first week of January. And so we have to estimate. So when we're dealing with revenues, there's certain ones that the board has control over to estimate. One is adequacy. And that is depending on, it's a risk, right? Do you do 100% of the adequacy or 95% of the adequacy? If your enrollment is trending up, Michelle has led us to be okay with 100% adequacy. If the enrollment's trending down, it increases the risk, because the adequacy, remember, is based on average daily membership of your kids. It's the population piece. So that's a decision that Finance Committee can recommend that the board has to adopt. And in the past, the Budget Committee has has provided input and feedback on this decision about using 95 or 100%, and it does matter, as you'll see in a few minutes. Another area that the board has control over is fund balance. How much money, because whatever is left over in this budget counts as revenue going into the next budget. And again, we spent a lot of time on fund balance as a finance committee. Just a little bit of history. We started about this time last year, we were at 150K. We reset it from 460 to 150. During the spring, we raised it to about 392. And the other piece, the last piece that the board has a lot of control over is how much, if any, you're going to take from the tax rate stabilization fund. Last year, and one of the ways we hedged against the 640, right, the one-time only 640, was to not take money from tax rate stabilization. Now, when we talk about tax rate, and this is, and Michelle, I hopefully feels that I've expressed to her how much I've appreciated learning from her. The tax rate is about the delta. It's about the change. Where expense, we start from zero based. The revenues and tax rate, because the tax rate is the culmination, it's all about the delta. So if everything was exactly the same, the exact expense and the exact revenue, the tax rate wouldn't change. But right? So
Right.
you have to look at what are we doing with adequacy and state aid? We know that went down. What are we doing with fund balance? What are we doing with the tax rate stabilization fund? And how this all comes together with some other variables I'm going to talk about, and to culminate with the tax. So for example, we had about $1 million increase. If state aid went up $1 million, there wouldn't be a change in the tax rate. Right, Michelle? Because the expense would have been offset by revenue. Even though we're spending $1 million more, the tax rate would have been flush. All right, and so when expense goes up and revenue goes up, we like it. We don't like when expense goes up and revenue goes down, and guess where you are this year as a board in 2020, where we are. So I'd like to walk through the revenue sheet and talk about a few things, and I like it, Rob, the other night you said, don't panic. There's decisions to be made, and there's a state budget to be done, and there's even federal money that is talking about coming all the way to towns and schools because of loss of revenue in states. So it's not panic. So can you see that? Is that that's the revenue sheet? And can you see some of the numbers? Is that big enough?
Yeah, we can see the numbers. We can't see the left-hand column.
Yeah. So I'll try and go low, and I'll have to slide over. So tuition, these are local sources. So tuition, right? That's like when we have people pay tuition, right? A youngster from out of town pays tuition to our schools or preschool. Interest earnings on any investments, food service, the student activities, the fee accounts. We used to have driver's ed in the old days, Michelle. I forgot about that. We used to get fees for driver's ed. So that's one piece. The one I want to look at here is, I want to make sure, it's the third one down, food service sales and transfers, because that's the big delta in this first section. And so just a little bit of background. The two numbers I want to speak to is this 100, and that came from Health Trust. Remember that at the right of the tax setting? They gave us some extra money because of the lack of utilization during COVID. And this is the food service. So just a couple of pieces of background information. Michelle and I, and this board and the previous board has lived with the specter of that $640,000 decrease in state aid. It's come up every meeting, and we tried to write. And so we knew we were going to run into a revenue deficit this year. And we've always wanted to, and this goes back to Dave when he started this, and feedback is try to stabilize the tax rate. You don't want a high tax rate low, because it's very difficult for people to budget and plan. So when we were faced with that $640,000 deficit, and actually it's down here now, just so see that 922, that's what we're talking about. It's a big number. When this 100 came in, and Michelle looked at the overall revenue picture, and we did this at the we talked finance committee, we talked school board, we thought it was the best to take that 100 and put it in an account and use that as revenue to offset lower revenues we were going to get in food service. So we put 150, this 150 is like in a savings account there above the 365 of new revenue to offset the lack of revenue we were going to get in food service, because we knew we were going to hybrid and things like that. So we took this 100 and a little bit more and saved it. And if we didn't do that, that 922 would be, well, sorry, that this whole thing, well, yeah, it would be $100,000 more, because we wouldn't have had the 150 to offset it. So that budgeting in transparency was about trying to understand that we didn't want a huge load, another 100K on top of the adequacy concerns we had. You with me?
Yep.
So we had that in savings. So because we put that in savings, and this was done at the very end of last year, so we're not going to, right, we don't anticipate getting it next year. And then here's the big one. I'm going to slide over. It's the state adequate education grant. That's adequacy. That is that sheet that I just told you. The two big factors on why it was last year 3.2 million and it's projected this year at 2.3 million are two big factors. One is the 640. The other is enrollment, right? Decrease enrollment due to the pandemic. Now, Michelle put in, and this is if we take, this is a very conservative, and she knows I'm not being judgmental on it, right? This is just a conservative approach of 95%. If we went to 100%, this 2.3 million would go up 5% of the value, which is what, 115,000, Michelle, something like that? So, and that's a board decision the board's going to have to make. Are you feeling that, you know, the vaccine, people are moving into town, we know houses are going, that people are coming, we got people coming back already, that the board thinks, you know, our enrollment's going to be more than it was this year. We're going to be aggressive and do 100%, or, and the board can choose, right, 97% if they wanted, Michelle. Like it can't be more than the 100%. So this is a decision, right? This we did. This is a decision of the board. This one here, everybody okay? Am I too fast?
Can I just bring up one little tiny thing? And it is that when we do this, because we do it early, let's just use a scenario that the board decides 97.5%. And at October 1st, we're given like a last round of it. Like DRA tells me they're almost about ready to give the tax rate. Do we want to increase any of our revenues or change any of our revenues? The board again can look at that and say, you know what, based on where we are, we're going to go to 100. So there is a scenario that you promise the taxpayers X cents. It's going to be lower than the X cents because you're going higher in revenue.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, and what Michelle does, and we've been close on this, we try very hard to give them a no worse than. It may be better. Like this year's tax rate was 3 cents. I think that's exactly what we said it was going to be, Rob, during when
Right.
in the budget. And one of the things that Michelle and I talk about, like we can't say, oh, we're going to raise state special ed aid to $500,000. It looked great, it would, right? But there's no basis for that, and we lose credibility. And then when it comes in at 176, the tax rate's up at tax setting 20 cents. They say, what in the hell is the schools doing? And
I have a quick question.
In all the 12 years we've been doing this, I don't think we've been off by anything worse than a penny. In some years we've been a lot better.
In the last 3 years, what has the board directed in the budget for a percentage? Like what was last year and the year before? I'm just trying to get an average of what the board's done.
Going up, so I suspect we've been closer to the 100%. When we were at, Rob, remember we were at 880?
Right.
And back then we refused to use 100, it would have been it would have been lack of credibility because our enrollment was going down every year. And we just didn't want to cover it because then how do you cover it? And we tried to be real honest, and you try to give them a worst case scenario because for their budgeting and for their purposes. And we want to build credibility.
So what would, Michelle, you're the numbers. What would you recommend? I mean, just to start, just.
Well, that's why I put in 95 because I'm more of the conservative gal.
Yeah.
Until we know more, but I
Okay.
know our other situations as well. So if we went to 100%, we'd get like $124,000 more.
But if we go
So-
100% and we don't get it, then we're gonna have to find that 124,000 somewhere, correct?
Well,
'Cause if we
no,
receive
what it
too
would,
much-
That's
not necessarily, but what it would mean though is you'd have to not spend something. You'd
Yeah.
have to make sure that your fund balance was going to cover everything enough that you were going to make up for that difference.
And it's hard
It's hard.
because you lose time. Like you can't make up fund balance on June 1st. You can't say, Steve, freeze the budget on June 1st. There's just no time to do it. We don't spend a lot from June 1st to July 1st. And we'll talk more about it, but this is when you're driving around, what you're comfortable with and where we're looking at enrollment. So what's the next factor? And I'm just going to slide over here. It's less fund balance to reduce taxes. This is the unreserved fund balance. This is what I spoke about. So a couple of years ago, we got all the way to 526. It's a number we got to. We met our obligation. It helped with the tax rate, but that was hard work. Then we went to 464, and these were putting a lot of pressure. We weren't implementing the budget. So last year, Michelle and I said, it's a reevaluation. Let's swallow and we got some revenue. Let's make this 150, but we just couldn't sustain that through the process. So it's right now, Michelle kept it at 392. But if you raise that to 492, that reduces your tax rate by 13 cents. You raised it to 592, you would reduce your tax rate by 26 cents. But what you have to remember is next year, you either meet that, or if you can't meet it, the tax rate's going to go up next year. So if you do 592, okay, and that's a big number, and maybe we can make it because of what the board did in COVID, but a regular budget year to come up with 592, that is a huge challenge. You might, freeze the budget early, but it would save you 26 cents on the tax rate. And so this number, and Michelle provides every month an update on this number. So, we're estimated where we are within our FY21 budget. But this is a number the board has control over, the adequacy the board has control over. And the last one is, like if you said, Steve, I want $1 million left over at the budget, then we freeze it, right? But then the next year, that's what you always have to worry about is, are you writing a check that next year is going to kill you? Because next
And
year,
just remember too, it's not only what you guys use for fund balance to reduce taxes, it's also what do we have to have as a saving, like not spend to cover the food service deficit,
Yeah.
which in recent years, it's been anywhere from 120 to 140,000. So this year, I'm going to tell you, it's probably going to be 200,000 at least. And so when you do that, you add that to, let's just say the 500,000, that's $700,000 that you can't spend. Or you got to have or you have to have extra revenue somehow that you didn't budget for to help with that 700,000 that you kind of got to make up.
and also if the board, and we're going to talk about this in a few minutes, if you want to fund a trust out of the fund balance, that goes in this total too, right? So some years in the maintenance trust, some years we've had a zero impact on the taxes for that say, because we put 100 grand out of fund balance. But that all adds up and puts pressure on implementing this budget. Now there's some things like we haven't used as much transportation in sports. That goes to fund balance. We we got information on the second bond, and we did pretty well. I'll mention it to the board tomorrow night on the second grant for the COVID that Michelle put in. So there's some revenue, but it's the big picture stuff, and you don't want to put, like, one town last year gave $1 million back. Well, if they only put $500,000 back this year, my taxes would go up a lot in the town that I live in. So you've got fund balance, you've got adequacy, and then you have this one. Article 10 for tax rate stabilization fund. And it is, now we like this one because this was a 0 last year. So that's all pure delta. If you take 200,000 out of that, that reduces your taxes by 26 cents. Those are the major areas that the board's going to have to decide, in addition to, and we're going to talk about this in a minute, do you want to put things in our trusts? Everybody okay?
Let's back up, Steve, so I can wrap my head around some of this.
Yeah.
So if we go back up towards the top, we're looking at a 922 hole. Yes?
Yep, out of adequacy.
Okay. So that's our, for lack of a better word, deficit. And
Well,
we need,
It's 817, Rob, is the counting the 150 we got from food service and any changes. So the deficit all in on revenues is 817.
okay.
Okay.
So in order to cover that, we can draw from fund balance to some degree.
Yep.
Yes. We can draw from Article 10 to some degree. And we could adjust the adequacy number as well.
Yes,
Those three variables.
yes.
Okay.
Michelle, when do you have like a idea of what our fund balance will be for June 30th if we're doing a budget in?
She reports out every month.
Yeah, I see that, but is it crazy to forecast 6 months out? Like,
Oh, yeah. It's been crazy ever since I got here that I have to do it because I'm going on assumptions, and I'm assuming that, like, I'll just use an example, and there's no judgment or tone or anything here, but let's just say that the special education department for some reason didn't relook at a PO that they had in, and it changed by 100,000 worse. Like, it's going to cost us $100,000 more, and I don't know that. And I'm going ahead in a financial and giving it based on what's in the system. Those are the things that, keep me up at night. Those things that I don't know about. I'm assuming everybody's, all in and told me everything I need to know. But also kids change too, and we can get a move in at the dime, at a drop of a dime. But
so bear with me 1 second, Rob, please. I apologize. So right now we have a fund balance for the financials in October of 299,000, correct? Basically on your report.
whatever it was, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And then we have a separate account, the tax stabilization, that we've put aside basically, which is Article 10, which is we try to cap it out at 2.5% usually, correct? Which is from the unreserved fund balance, correct?
Of the previous year.
Correct. Okay. Got it. All right. That's clear. And then we're going to do a warrant potentially that will give us an opportunity to do up to 5%.
Right.
At the end of the year, potentially, with this unreserved fund balance to put away towards tax stabilization.
So if,
Correct? Okay.
for example, just to walk
Sorry,
you
guys.
through what I was so appreciative in the board, when the board last year chose to take care of the elevator, take care of $100,000, and all of that would have been, if we didn't do that, it would have been on this 392. And that say it would have been, because we capped this out. And so that could have been 592 last year, and we would have been very much of a struggle to meet that, this year, and then add more to help. So that's why this 5%, if you do end up with $200,000 left over, there's going to be more room here to save it for the rainy day, as opposed to peaks and valleys. The other pieces that are going to factor in is the trusts, and we have 4 trusts we're talking about. We have the maintenance trust. And did you do any trusts in this form, Michelle? Not yet, right? So, and I think, I forget how much was last year, 150, Michelle, 109, I forget what it was last year.
Yeah, it was 150, I believe.
So if you put 150 in, you know, that, if it comes out of fund balance, then we've increased our fund balance. If it comes out of budget, you increase your budget. I don't think Michelle and I will recommend anything out of, for the vehicle, because we've really decommissioned one of our little bus. Special ed trust, originally I was hoping to put some money in there, but based on where we are, I think we'll be okay. We've only drawn on it a couple times in 12 years. And then we would like to take $25,000 and put it in a technology advancement, technology equipment trust that we've talked about. But we'll try to keep those. Those are also impact, right? If you chose not to put anything in the maintenance trust, that would save you 20 cents on the tax rate. But that did pass last year, so the community does understand at least that piece of it. They understand, you know, so this is the conundrum. It's how much can you lock into that 817? If you cut it in half, and then hope that, you know, we get some aid, then, you know, it is what it is. Everybody okay about thinking about what the conundrum is?
Now, Rob, you know, my thought process, just listening to this, I would say we would start with 95%.
Yeah, I
State.
think we almost have to, given, I mean, there may be
COVID.
people who decide that, you know, their kid went elsewhere and they're gonna stay elsewhere. I mean, we just don't
Yeah,
know. Too many
yeah. With-
mysteries at this point.
So we could say, you know, this is a recommendation from the finance committee, you know, that we think 95, we have the option to change it later, but that's where I'm at.
Yep, we're trying to slay that 817 dragon. And without the trusts. Everybody okay?
So whatever we don't slay of that 817, Steve, is an increase in tax rate,
You got it.
correct?
Yep. And 13-cent increments for every 100 grand.
Okay, and that, yeah, and that's without looking at the expense side where we could,
Yep, and we'll talk about some more things we
we
can
need
do.
to go there.
Keep going.
All right. Yeah, keep on trucking. Thank you.
The next one, and I just wanted to talk briefly, we talked about leadership, and so we just talked about a $25,000 contributions to technology advancement trust, right? And that's to gradually fund over time the replacement to the Chromebooks that we've talked, and other things. So last time we talked about the Bedford model, and there's been some support documentation in the folder. So the Bedford model has 3 different approaches. One of which is the district, they buy a Chromebook district model from the district. And the district loads it, takes care of the maintenance, all that fun stuff. You just write the district a check for about $300. Model 2 is you don't have, and that gives you 24-hour access 7 days a week, including the summers. You keep it all year round. Number 2 is I don't have $300. I'm not spending that. You walk into the school, you get a Chromebook for the school day in your schools. It's the districts, they have a charger. You go in, sign it out, and you have it all day, and you can't take it home. And the third option is you buy your own Chromebook, you bring it in, the district will load it with applications and the management software.
What was the first one again?
First one, you write a check to the district, you get it, or you own it and you have it for summers, you have it 24 hours. And the district will maintain it if it breaks. The option is no money at all from tax, no additional money. You don't have to do it. You come in, you just use one of the loaners during the day. And the district takes care of that. And the third one is you buy it, you bring it in, we'll put stuff on it, but we're not maintaining it. And it's
I would
about
like a,
$100. Now, how they sold it to the community is they no longer required a $120 graphing calculator at 9th grade, which they used. This is high school, by the way. I'm sorry I didn't mention, this is the high school. I don't think they do it in the middle school, but this is high school. So like I bought Jessie when she went to Bow High, it was $120 on sale at Staples for $100. And they told the community, you do not have to buy that anymore. So now it's $180. And they also sold the community on becoming as much paperless, markerless, binderless, textbookless as possible. And they talk about reducing the weight in backpacks on the way home for that stuff. So that's how they sold it. And it was about a $300 hit. When talking with Matt and the leadership team, I think what we're doing, and like is we're giving everybody a Chromebook on district expense. That's the easiest for efficiency management. Everybody gets the same one, right? And it's easiest for management. When you do the 3 tiers, how many do you have on call? You have to manage it in a lot different places. And Bedford has a little bit more management piece. And Rob, I know you talked about a cost share. I have not seen any cost share where you pay $100 and you get it at the end. I did remember I told you we did look into a technology fee, and Tom Barry felt it was not within the laws of school funding that we could do a technology fee, because it's not like a co-curricular fee. It's basically a curricular fee, and that is part of the free appropriate public education.
So that would fall into the guidelines of trying to do a cost share with you. You wouldn't be.
Michelle's advice, and I agree, is we'd have to get more legal on how we do that. And nobody that we know, and Matt and I don't know, Michelle too, I think Bedford's the only one that we know that's running a buy your, pay your own way on a Chromebook one-on-one initiative. And there are more support documents in the folder, but I hope this met your needs about background and how they did it and costs and things like that.
Yeah, I did get a chance to look through the other stuff. It's just how to make it sustainable. I know you've had, and I haven't, the other Hopkinton funds, and I know that you didn't want to spend money there, but is this an area where you might be open to that idea that some of those funds could be spent for something like this? And
I think one of the things, Rob, if we're going to go, and it'd be interesting, a full one-on-one initiative when we have some time, I think it'd be reasonable to really push people to stop buying textbooks, or look at a different model altogether. So we reap financial rewards from the $300 per kid investment, not just in the, I think we might be able to reduce. And if you have, it's obviously hard this year, we don't have them yet, but when there's a normal year, like, be interesting next year at the budget time when you work together, and if they have them for half a year at least, what can we reduce in the budget because we have Chromebook?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it would be, I know when I was still there teaching, you look for the online resources. It's just really hard to find something as simple as a textbook that sort of lets you structure things around it. It's just so hard. And maybe things have changed in the last couple of years, but
yeah, it would be interesting to see when the kids have it 24 hours a day. Everybody has one. They all have access. I don't know. I think it's going to take us a little while to have this impact that kind of budgeting, that kind of operations. But I think the future is probably bright in this area. But to be honest, Jessie's been on one-on-one for 3 years. She still has textbooks.
Right.
But we'll see.
Yeah, I just don't recall there being a reasonable substitute that
I'm with you.
Where everything that you can find in a textbook, you can find in an online resource with a similar standard.
And I'm not disputing it at all. I'm just right, because I'm with you. I agree. But I think over time, this kind of investment, I hope we can reduce other areas of the budget as well.
Yeah.
Cool beans?
Yep. Thank you.
So the next piece Yeah, and I'm really glad, Rob, that you suggested putting this on the agenda to just talk through the HEA early retirement program and where we're at. So real quick, I think Hopkinton, and you might know this more than me, but I think Hopkinton was the first school districts to establish an early retirement program, understanding it's a win-win. It's influx of staff as well as a departing appreciation. And because I know in Hollis, when you and I were there, we actually copied the CBA, copied Hopkinton's a little bit in there. So, so there were a couple of things. It starts at age 54, 55, something like that. It goes to
55.
55. It goes to like 63, 4, Rob, something like that.
Yeah, up to 60. I want to say 64.
I'm gonna say so too. So, and it's obviously it's a declining value. We've had this is very much regulated by the CBA. We've had the contract requires the board to fund 3, and the board can fund more. It's a 3-step process. They request, board grants request, and the staff member accepts the request. The timeline is November 15th to request, January 15th to grant or deny, March 1st for the person to accept. This year, the requesting timeline is over. We've had 5 requests for early retirement. So Michelle did the financial analysis and found that if we, there was about $105,000 budgeted for the salary of this port, this bucket of money. There's FICA and other things. The 2 additional, because there is some money left over. So this is where it's fund balance, fund balance left over or utilizing fund balance. If you just take the 3 and they accept, then there would be money left over in this account in fund balance, right? About $30-something thousand, Michelle, $37,000, something like that.
Just under 32,000.
Just under 32. So that's where the fund balance comes from sometimes, is unused early retirement. So that would be in the plus side, Rob, on that, right? On the fund balance, the 390, right, Norm? With me, the 390. So, but the board does have an opportunity to accept the 2 additional. So Michelle worked that out. It would cost out of FY21, it would cost about $60,000. That would reduce fund balance, right? Because they'd have to take that somewhere to compensate and take all 5 early retirements. However,
Because we budget for 3, right?
correct, you got it, you nailed it.
Okay.
Now, what impacts the financial, what are the variables? It's the step and track you hire somebody at, the replacement, and the insurance plan, right? That goes into the cost of the employee. So if we hire, like Rob sometimes talks about me as a math teacher when I was hired at Hollis Brookline, I was single MA2. And so if there was a retired teacher that I replaced, family in top scale, single early, I bet you Hollis Brookline could have saved $50,000 just on my hire that year. It literally with health insurance and salary in that 1 year. So that's so over time, so we have to put in a replacement value in the budget for those 5 people, right? And they are less in years, and we kind of do a balance of single, 2-person family to blend it so we have enough money to cover when we hire. So based on an estimate of what I think we did a master's 7 and a master's 3, and I think we did 1 2-person and 1 family.
Master's 2 and a master's 7. The master's 2 would be a 2-person. The master's 7 would be a family.
And so if that's another thing, right? We can look optimistically, but right now in the budget, if we put these in the budget, a master's 2, master's 7 family, we would be able to reduce FY22 by $54,000. So it's a cost to this year about 60 and a savings for next year's budget about 54. And Michelle and I, like, we don't say, oh, we're just going to budget a single. Let's just budget everybody at single and say, oh, we're heroes, we're saving all this, because eventually you got to write that check. And if you put 4 singles in and you get 4 families, that puts so much pressure on fund balance, puts so much pressure on the budget. So it's a blend based on our history.
So the 2 estimates are for if we do the 2 additional.
That's correct.
Okay. So essentially we're taking from this year and we're saving next year, and then it turns out to be a wash, and then it helps us the following year because that same 54,000 minus a little bit because of step will be saved.
Yes.
And if we end up hiring inside of that, then we save even more, and maybe it's a win plus in the immediate term.
If we hired 2 little Stevie Chamberlains at Masters 1 singles, you'd save a lot more. And we just don't, we don't make this stuff. Michelle and I never make this stuff up. We try to be realistic on where we are, and we have a hiring history.
What's the projection for the other 3 in terms of where you budgeted for that?
It's
I
great.
don't have them in front of me,
I'm sorry, Rob, I should have got that for you.
but I did family on all of them.
Okay.
And we go a little less for elementary school classroom teachers, and a little bit more for specialized positions. But we'll get that to you. We can get that to you.
I'm just thinking, the whole bucket.
Yep.
And you and I have talked a lot about reaching out to some schools early. I mean, all of these 5 positions, these are done deals. These positions are going to need to be filled, right? And we've got all grade level folks. So
Yeah.
if we project early, maybe we get lucky.
Yes, and I think you might have been involved in the negotiations. We moved the acceptance date. It used to be like April 15th. And right, Michelle? We moved it up to I think you did that too, Rob. I think we were in the room at the same time. We moved that to March 1st. So we could get an early start on the hiring. We could get and understand the budget. So we can't really advertise until March 1, just because that's when they finally accept it.
Right. Given the restraints on the budget this year and given where we're at, would it be out of line to go to those 5 people and say, for budgeting purposes, if you could tell us sooner than later, that would be really swell? Or is that?
I have done that before. Some have understood that, and some, I remember the last day they were deciding. But yes, I have done exactly that, sent an email, no pressure. But if you're willing to accept, this could help us going forward.
Right. I remember a guy who sent you a note on July 2nd of the year. He was ready to go. So really early.
Yes, I remember that too.
So I found out, so the elementary and the one of the middle high, I'm not going to get specific on who the person is, was done at Masters 3. And then there's another high school, there's a high school teacher that was Masters 7.
So I have a quick question. Oh, go Rob, you go first.
Michelle, what's your gut instinct on this in terms of staying with the traditional 3 or going to the 5?
So honestly, we've gone down from what we normally have done. We've normally not looked at each specific thing and pretty much said Masters 7. Last year we tweaked it a little bit with what we're doing it for this year. So it's very new to this. So I will say it depends on in my opinion, it depends on their job. Like if it's a special ed teacher and it's a high crucial need and, already young ones there and you need, so it just depends.
I think, Michelle, Rob was talking about 3 or 5 people taking for the retirement.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So 3 or 5. Well, let's just say I'm not too optimistic all 5 would take it. I think that of the 5, I would say 3 or 4 will probably take it. I'm not so sure about the 5th one.
So it's hard, right? So, right, if you put in 5 in the budget, only 4 pull, then we put a deficit already, I guess. So,
Right.
so I think putting in savings of all 5 might be a little bit of a struggle, but putting in 4 would probably be okay.
Right. Which would, again, if you're comfortable going to the 5 and just saying, I know you don't have to tell us till, but for budgeting reasons, if we could know by the end of December, that would be really helpful.
I'm comfortable doing that, Rob, and some have, by the way, right? Some have been early and some have been late. So I don't think it's and I try to do it in a way that is no pressure and they have the contract date, but if they know, it's not. Happy to do that.
So I have a quick question, just so I'm clear. So we budget for 3 last year, and 5 has given some notation to us that they might bite. So in order for us to fund those additional 2 positions, those 2 retirements, that would come out of the fund balance that's been occurring during the year. So if we had 200,000, it would be reduced by 60,000 to fund those extra 2. We would just have less to put into Article 10 at the end of the year and put some into revenue for the following year. Is that correct?
I think that was very well said, Mr. Goupel.
Okay.
But Norm, and this is something that I've been talking about for a long time now, or at least in the last 9 months or however long I've been sitting in this chair, is that it'll slow growth down the road.
Yeah.
That's, if we can hire right. And
Yeah. No, I know exactly what you're talking about, Rob, and I think it helps with other areas too in the business of the district. I think where I struggle a little bit with is, do they have so much leeway that they can pull out, and then we're you know what I'm saying? Because don't they have a point where they can say, you know what, I want to stay another year, and then we can't offer it to somebody else, right? Isn't that
Only before March 1st. Once,
okay?
except March 1st, the board can grant, like if they say, March 1st, I'm retired, and April 1st, I changed my mind. The board can grant them, reinstate them, but you do not have to.
It's hard to make a budget when you're already committed to one, and then they're kind of ahead of the game.
We've never had that happen, that after the acceptance date, someone's come back and asked for reinstatement. So just
Okay.
It's a rare occurrence. I'm right, Michelle. We've never had that happen.
No, Rob, I'm with you, Rob. I mean, my feeling, just from listening to discussion and just stuff that Rob and I have talked about, I think it makes sense for 5. But I think I'm with Rob. Try and understand that this is a unique time where we need to have as much flexibility in this budget. The deficit that we have, just to try and help this for years to come, because it won't be an immediate impact because it's a wash. Because 60,000 would be this year for an additional 2, 54,000 saving next year. So it's the next couple of years that we'll see a difference in the budget.
It's a very good question, and so maybe what we want to do, because we haven't even granted their request yet, right? So maybe we want to grant all 5, like at the next meeting.
Yeah,
I would absolutely entertain doing that.
And that doesn't mean we have to budget for it. It just means we start the clock, sort of, kind of. Yeah. And the only thing the contract says, which I think is interesting, I think this is why it does it this way. You have to do all 5 at the same time. So you can't say, I'm going to offer it to 3, 1 pulls, I'm now going to offer it to the next one. You can't do that in the contract. So I think we should offer it to all 5. That doesn't, but we got to be ready to do that if they all accept. So just think about that. But if you offer it to 5, then you can get a 4th. If you only offer it to 3, you might not be, there's no guarantee we're going to get the others. Does that make, I don't know if I was clear on what I just said.
No, it's, you're giving everyone the opportunity. So you don't have someone, well, oh, you guys kind of aren't giving me a chance to accept. If you're offering 3.
Maybe we want to do it 1 more week so you guys can think more about it. We have another meeting on the 7th, because once you offer it, you got to be able, that means we're going to have to spend about 60 grand of fund balance. It's like the add-all, right?
Yeah.
So we don't have to do it tomorrow, but I think I'm starting to think more about it now we've had a chance to talk this out. I think we got to be ready to offer 5 and be ready to budget for 5. But I don't think we should. So does that make sense to think about it? And for the next last meeting, we pull it?
Yeah, I think so. And I think we start getting in touch with teaching institutions.
Yep.
Send some letters. And this is our projected needs. We want your blue stars.
Absolutely. Keene, Plymouth, Lowell, Franklin Pierce, UNH.
Yeah.
Send letters. Look, we anticipate these kind of openings. Please keep us in mind. Something to the placement office.
Absolutely.
That's simple. We write letters, and these are our anticipated openings. Please keep us in mind. This is the website, blah, 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 blah. I'll send them a letter during so they'll have it, placement office will have it right after the break.
Yeah, that'd be perfect. Because people will be going into their student teaching,
Yep.
and they'll start looking around.
Yeah, I'm with you. No, happy to do that. So think about it, but I think we should do it. I think we should wait until the one more meeting, right? Don't you think, Michelle, give one more week to marinate a little bit?
Okay.
Okay.
Yes. Everybody okay? The last couple of things, just for the community, if they watch this tape tomorrow, we will be talking more about trust, more about a little bit of the CIP, a little bit about tax, the revenue. I've got my cuts, Norm, right? I'm going to present superintendent cuts tomorrow night. I'm going to present
Thank you.
required increases versus necessary increases. We've got the homeschool census by grade, and we're going to go through some more budgeting stuff tomorrow. So that's tomorrow night. And then a week from is when Michelle will take the estimates from trusts and revenue and create the tax rate for us. That sound good?
That sounds great.
And the last thing, just a little heads up to the people listening, tomorrow night, the board, as an action item, will accept the audit. I hopefully will accept the audit of FY20. Mike Campo from Plazic and Sanders is it Sanderson or Sanderson will come and speak to the audit and just for a few minutes, because it's the first time this board has had a chance to accept an audit. Dave McKenzie will come and talk about the assets, their liquidity and security in the assets, and we'll reauthorize 5 policies: fund balance, transfer, bid, fixed asset, and there's one more. I've got it. And unreserved fund balance. Did I say that already?
Investment.
Investment, thank you. Ding, ding, you get the ding, ding. That's tomorrow night.
All right. Anything else, Norm?
Nope, they answered my question to give a quick thing that we talked about with the unreserved fund balance. I can do that tonight for the budget committee. They just had a couple questions on that, and we're good to go on for that. So
all right, we've got a couple minutes left, and we've had a couple of attendees, so we'll see if anybody has a question. So I see Bob and Catherine Mateo there, Matteo. So if you have a question and you'd like to ask it, now would be the time. And if not, that's okay too. All right, I don't see any hands popping up, so we'll call that. I really apologize, guys. I don't know how I got my day, but luckily I was sitting upstairs getting ready to go look at a job, and so it won't happen again.
No worries. Hopefully you got what you need today. And
yep. And Michelle, you got I sent you an email back on those questions I had, just in terms of the
Okay, I'll
changes.
take a look at it before I sign off.
Yeah. And
and the reason why I love this answer is one of my favorite answers, because I had the same question. The reason why it went up a little bit, Rob, is because the Teamster contract passed. That now gets added on as the amount of the entire warrant.
okay. All right. When I saw the total operating budget and it wasn't a match, I was like, oh, that didn't.
I've had that exact same question before. That's why.
Yeah. And then the other two things is just about some formatting for the information that's going out. And I do
Yeah,
think-
it's really I did attach the chart thing. So you guys have that, which Steve will put up on the website. But the other thing is what size is wanted for the width or height or whatever.
Yeah, that's what I sent you. And hopefully it doesn't mess up the formatting too much, but I think if it's just the height and a font, it shouldn't mess up the width.
Okay,
So then everything should fit.
Okay.
And should be okay.
Okay.
And I do think there should be a little challenge, so you got that 10 digit code, throw it up there and let people decipher, and it's a race to see if they can beat you. Maybe that could raise some revenue, right? Is that legal? We could do that.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you all very much. And again, my
Great job, guys.
apologies.
No, don't be.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
See you.
tomorrow.
bye.